All right, I know I missed yesterday, but let's get on with it then. Make up for lost time. Chapter 7, The Ocean at the End of the Lane. The next day was bad. My parents had both left the house before I woke. It had turned cold, and the sky was a bleak and charmless gray. I went through my parents' bedroom to the balcony that ran along the length of their bedroom and my sister's and mine, and I stood on the balcony and I prayed to the sky that Ursula Monkton would have tired of this game and I would not have to see her again. Ursula Monkton was waiting for me at the bottom of the stairs when I went down. "Same rules as yesterday, little pitcher," she said. "You can't leave the property. If you try, I will lock you in your bedroom for the rest of the day. And when your parents come home, I will tell them you did something disgusting." "They won't believe you." She smiled sweetly. "Are you sure?" "I tell them you pulled out your little willy and whittled all over the kitchen floor, and I had to mop it up and disinfect it. I think they'll believe me. I'll be very convincing." I went out of the house and down to my laboratory. I ate all the fruit that I had hidden there the other day. I read Sandy Sees It Through, another of my mother's books. Sandy was a plucky but poor schoolgirl who was accidentally sent to a posh school, where everybody hated her. In the end, she exposed the geography teacher as an international Bolshevik who had tied the real geography teacher up. The climax was in the school assembly, when Sandy bravely got up and made a speech which began, "I know I should not have been sent here. It was only an error in paperwork that sent me here and sent Sandy spelled with a Y to the town grammar school. But I thank Providence that I came here, because Miss Streebling is not who she claims to be." In the end, Sandy was embraced by the people who had hated her. My father came home early from work, earlier than I remembered seeing him home in years. I wanted to talk to him, but he was never alone. I watched them from the branch of my beech tree. First, he showed Ursula Monkton around the gardens, proudly showing her the rose bushes and the black currant bushes, and the cherry trees and the azaleas, as if he had anything to do with them, as if they had not been put in place and tended by Mr. Woolery for 50 years before ever we had bought the house. She laughed at all of his jokes. I could not hear what he was saying, but I could see the crooked smile he had when he knew he was saying something funny. She was standing too close to him. Sometimes he would rest his hand on her shoulder, in a friendly sort of way. It worried me that he was standing so close to her. He didn't know what she was. She was a monster. And he just thought she was a normal person, and he was being nice to her. She was wearing different clothes today, a gray skirt of the kind they called a midi, and a pink blouse. On any other day, if I had seen my father walking around the garden, I would have run over to him, but not that day. I was scared that he would be angry, or that Ursula Monkton would say something to make him angry with me. I became terrified of him when he was angry. His face, angular and usually affable, would grow red, and he would shout so loudly and furiously that it would literally paralyze me. I would not be able to think. He never hit me. He did not believe in hitting. He would tell us how his father had hit him, how his mother had chased him with a broom, how he was better than that. When he got angry enough to shout at me, he would occasionally remind me that he did not hit me, as if to make me grateful. In the school stories I read, misbehavior often resulted in caning, or the slipper, and then was forgiven and done. I would sometimes envy those fictional children the cleanness of their lives. I did not want to approach Ursula Monkton. I did not want to risk making my father angry with me. I wondered if this would be a good time to try to leave the property, to head down the lane. But I was certain that if I did, I would look up to see my father's angry face beside Ursula Monkton's, all pretty and smug. So I simply watched them from the huge branch of the beech tree. When they walked out of sight behind the azalea bushes, I clambered down the rope ladder, went up into the house, up the balcony, and I watched from there. It was a gray day, but there were butter-yellow daffodils everywhere. and narcissi in profusion, with their pale outer petals and their dark orange trumpets. My father picked a handful of narcissi and gave them to Ursula Monckton, who laughed and said something and then made a curtsy. He bowed in return and said something that made her laugh. I thought he must have proclaimed himself her knight in shining armor or something like that. I wanted to shout down to him to warn him that he was giving flowers to a monster, but I did not. I just stood on the balcony and watched, and they did not look up and they did not see me. My book of Greek myths had told me that the narcissi were named after a beautiful young man, so lovely that he had fallen in love with himself. He saw his reflection in a pool of water and would not leave it, and, eventually, he died. So the gods were forced to transform him into a flower. In my mind, when I read this, I had imagined that a narcissus must be the most beautiful flower in the world. I was disappointed when I learned that it was just a less impressive daffodil. My sister came out of the house and went over to them. My father picked her up and swung her in the air. They all walked inside together. My father with my sister holding on to his neck, and Ursula Monckton, her arms filled with yellow and white flowers. I watched them. I watched as my father's free hand, the one not holding my sister, went down and rested casually, proprietarily, on the swell of Ursula Monckton's mini-skirted bottom. I would react differently to that now. At the time, I did not believe I thought anything of it at all. I was 7. I climbed up into my bedroom window, easy to reach from the balcony, and down onto my bed, where I read a book about a girl who stayed in the Channel Islands and defied the Nazis because she would not abandon her pony. And while I read, I thought, Ursula Monckton cannot keep me here forever. Soon enough, in a few days at the most, someone will take me into town or away from here, and then I will go to the farm at the bottom of the lane, and I will tell Letty Hempstock what I did. Then I thought, suppose Ursula Monckton only needs a couple of days, and that scared me. Ursula Monckton made meatloaf for dinner that evening, and I would not eat it. I was determined not to eat anything she made or cooked or touched. My father was not amused. But I don't want it, I told him. I'm not hungry. It was Wednesday, and my mother was attending her meeting to raise money so that people in Africa who needed water could drill wells in the village hall of the next village down the road. She had posters that she would put up, diagrams of wells and photographs of smiling people. At the dinner table there were my sister, my father, Ursula Monckton, and me. It's good for you, and it's tasty, said my father. And we do not waste food in this house. I said I wasn't hungry. I had lied. I was so hungry it hurt. Then just try a little nibble. It's your favorite. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes and gravy. You love them. There was a children's table in the kitchen where we ate when my parents had friends over or would be eating late. But that night, we were at the adult table. I preferred the children's table. I felt invisible there. Nobody watched me eat. Ursula Monckton sat next to my father and stared at me with a tiny smile at the corner of her lips. Oh, excuse me. I know I should shut up, be silent, be sullen. But I couldn't help myself. I had to tell my father why I did not want to eat. I won't eat anything she made, I told him. I don't like her. You will eat your food, said my father. You will at least try it and apologize to Miss Monckton. I won't. He doesn't have to, said Ursula Monckton sympathetically, and she looked at me and she smiled. I do not think that either of the other two people at the table noticed that she was smiling with amusement or that there was nothing sympathetic in her expression, or her smile, or her rotting cloth eyes. I'm afraid he does, said my father. His voice was just a little louder, and his face was just a little redder. I won't have him cheeking you like that. Then to me, give me one good reason, just one, why you won't apologize and why you won't eat the lovely food that Ursula prepared for us. I didn't lie well. I told him. Because she's not human, I said. She's a monster. She's a... What did the Hempstocks call her kind of thing? She's a flea. My father's cheeks were burning red now, and his lips were thin. He said, outside, into the hall, this minute. My heart sank inside me. I climbed down from my stool and followed him out into the corridor. It was dark in the hallway. The only light came from the kitchen, a sheet of clear glass above the door. He looked down at me. You will go back into the kitchen. You will apologize to Miss Monckton. You will finish your plate of food. Then, quietly and politely, you will go straight upstairs to bed. No, I told him. I won't. I bolted, ran down the hallway, round the corner, and I pounded up the stairs. My father, I had no doubt, would come after me. He was twice my size and fast. But I did not have to keep going for long. There was only one room in that house that I could lock, and it was there that I headed. Left at the top of the stairs and along the hall to the end, I reached the bathroom ahead of my father. I slammed the door and I pushed the little silver bolt closed. He had not chased me. Perhaps he thought it was beneath his dignity chasing a child. But in a few moments I heard his fist slam and then a voice saying, "Open this door!" I didn't say anything. I sat on the plush toilet seat cover and I hated him almost as much as I hated Ursula Monckton. The door banged again, harder this time. "If you don't open this door," he said, loud enough to make sure I heard it through the door, "I'm breaking it down." Could he do that? I didn't know. The door was locked. Locked doors stopped people coming in. A locked door meant that you were in there, and when people wanted to come into the bathroom, they would jiggle the door and it wouldn't open, and they would say, "Sorry," or shout, "Are you going to be long?" And the door exploded inward. The little silver bolt hung off the door frame, all bent and broken, and my father stood in the doorway, filling it, his eyes huge and white, his cheeks burning with fury. He said, "Right." That was all he said, but his hand held my upper left arm in a grip I could have never broken. I wondered what he would do now. Would he, finally, hit me? Or send me to my room? Or shout at me so loudly that I wished I were dead? He did none of those things. He pulled me over to the bathtub. He leaned over, pushed the white rubber plug into the plug hole. Then he turned on the cold tap, water gushing out, splashing the white enamel. Then, steadily and slowly, it filled the bath. The water ran noisily. My father turned to open the door. My father turned to the open door. "I can deal with this," he said to Ursula Monckton. She stood in the doorway, holding my sister's hand, and she looked concerned and gentle, but there was triumph in her eyes. "Close the door," said my father. My sister started whimpering, but Ursula Monckton closed the door as best she could, for one of the hinges did not fit properly, and the broken bolt stopped the door from closing all the way. It was just me and my father. His cheeks had gone from red to white, and his lips were pressed together, and I did not know what he was going to do or why he was running a bath, but I was scared, so scared. "I'll apologize," I told him. "I'll say sorry. I didn't mean what I said. She's not a monster. She's pretty." He didn't say anything in response. The bath was full, and he turned the cold tap off. Then, swiftly, he picked me up, put his huge hands under my armpits, swung me up with ease so I felt like I weighed nothing at all. I looked at him, at the intent expression on his face. He had taken off his jacket before he came upstairs. He was wearing a light blue shirt and a maroon paisley tie. He pulled off his watch on its expandable strap, dropped it onto the window ledge. Then I realized what he was going to do. And I kicked out, and I flailed at him, neither of which actions had any effect of any kind as he plunged me down into the cold water. I was horrified, but it was initially the horror of something happening against the established order of things. I was fully dressed. That was wrong. I had my sandals on. That was wrong. The bath water was cold. So cold and so wrong. That was what I thought initially as he pushed me into the water. And then he pushed me further, pushing my head and shoulders beneath the chilly water, and the horror changed its nature. I thought, I'm going to die. And thinking that, I was determined to live. I flailed with my hands, trying to find something to hold on to, but there was nothing to grab, only the slippery sides of the bath I'd bathed in for the last 2 years. I had read many books in that bath. It was one of my safe places, and now I had no doubt I was going to die there. I opened my eyes beneath the water, and I saw it dangling there in front of my face, my chance for life, and I clutched it with both hands. My father's tie. I held it tightly, pulled myself up as he pushed me down, gripping it for life itself, pulling my face up and out of the frigid water, holding on to his tie so tightly that he could no longer push my head and shoulders back into the bath without going in himself. My face was now out of the water, and I clamped my teeth onto his tie just below the knot. We struggled. I was soaked, took some small pleasure in the knowledge that he was soaked as well, his blue shirt clinging to his huge form. Now he pushed me down again, but fear of death gives us strength. My hands and my teeth were clamped to his tie, and he could not break his grip on them without hitting me. My father did not hit me. He straightened up, and I was pulled up with him, soaked and sputtering and angry and crying and scared. I let go of his tie with my teeth, but still held on with my hands. He said, "You ruined my tie. Let go." The tie had tightened to a pea size. The lining of the tie was dangling damply outside of it. He said, "You should be glad that your mother isn't here." I let go, dropped to the puddled bathroom lino. I took a step backwards towards the toilet. He looked at me. Then he said, "Go to your bedroom. I don't want to see you again tonight." I went to my room. Well, that was something.